I'm Mike DeLuca. Welcome to this rare In the Trenches look at the craft of screenwriting. Today we're sitting here with Ted Griffin, whose very witty, very gritty work has included in the past the screenplays for films like Ocean's 11, Ravenous, Best Laid Plans, and of course Matchstick Men, which he wrote with his brother Nick. Thank you, Ted, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How did you come to start writing with your brother? How did that work out?
We grew up in the same house and knew each other from there, and decided early on that we wanted to work together at some point.
Fortuitous coincidence.
Yeah, it did. He was there first, and then I came about 4 years later.
And then the screenplay followed.
Yeah.
Does he also have a worthless degree in English?
He has a worthless degree in film from UCLA. So go to film school, everyone.
I feel his pain. I too share a worthless BFA. And NYU.
In film?
In film.
What a waste of time.
Fine arts. Now, is it true that you actually did a variety of odd jobs with that degree in hand?
Oh, yes. I came out here
car?
with a $100,000 education and got a $5.75 an hour job as a dry cleaner across the street from Chasen's when it still existed.
Keeping the parents proud.
Yeah, they were really proud. And
please tell me they're prouder now. Though.
They're prouder now. Dad less so, but the drinking has probably impacted that more than anything. Mine. So I worked as a dry cleaner for a few months. A few other jobs, construction work, not actually doing any construction, just wearing a tie in a trailer and faxing. But did fluff and fold at the dry cleaner. Don't make any fluffing jokes. And Gabriel Byrne was one of the clients of the dry cleaner, and so I used to do his
tidy whities.
Yeah, and then I sold some scripts a couple years later, and there was a
there's a little bit more of a transition between Gabriel Byrne's underwear and selling some scripts.
Tell the whole story.
Well, a little bit more detail.
All right, but it's just I like to name drop, and so I was cutting over the dull stuff. All right,
nothing happened between Gabriel Byrne and the first screenplay being sold?
All right, I'll go through the whole bio then. So I come out, I've written 2 scripts before I come to Los Angeles, although I am from here. Come out of college, I have 2 scripts written, which are both instantly shelved and bad. I write, I think, 3 more before, and get a bunch of rejection letters from all sorts of agents, and then through a friend of a friend and through sleeping around, I get sort of hooked up with an agent who then sells 3 of them in a week. And so I go from...
And you promptly fired your agent after that?
No, that was last month, but thanks for bringing it up. Jesus. All right, no.
They edit this.
Yeah, okay. I think basically let's go from this is a rare and in-depth look into Ted Griffin. I think that's probably a good place to start, right? Let's just pick up from there and or just wrap up.
What was the point shift where you knew you wanted to be a screenwriter?
Oh, from early childhood. My mother was the daughter of a sort of mediocre film director and a grade B film actress.
This is your grandfather and grandmother?
My grandfather and grandmother, and he made like 50 movies with great people and made basically the worst movies of theirs.
It's like my last 2 years at New Line, basically.
Yeah, no. That was something that I think you were aspiring to.
Well, I achieved that goal, which is why I'm hosting this show.
But then you brought the bar a little lower at DreamWorks, which is what.
Which is the least I could do.
No, but listen, there's Zero Trip, and you'll always have that.
Produced by that auteur Ivan Reitman.
Yes, and written and directed by friends Berg, Schaefer, and Mandel. I don't know their first names. Former friends. Yikes. We're talking about me.
Well, I was wondering when did you first decide you wanted to be a screenwriter?
Yeah, so
then you lapsed into your tall tale of your grandparents.
Yeah, so no, I grew up with all this sort of Hollywood memorabilia around, and my grandmother was still alive when I was a child, so we're sort of inundated with all this Hollywood stuff. Although I grew up in Pasadena, which is about as close to Hollywood culturally as Wyoming. It's a completely different thing. So from an early age, was sort of making movies in the backyard on this thing called VHS, which existed back then. And actually, I think I started on Super 8, which makes me feel like a relic now. But so was making films.
Do you still have those Super 8 films?
Yeah. We're gonna look at a clip later, and
I'll hold you to that.
Yeah. So that was I was sort of born into it in a way, and wanted to sort of make movies ever since then.
You had a pretty eclectic start. Is there any one thing that prepared you for life as a screenwriter? The temping, the dry cleaning?
I had a night in prison in high school, which shaped me. I'm trying to think if there's sort of one event. College, not at all.
Right.
I would say I'd rather have taken the Spielberg, Orson Welles route to becoming a filmmaker, which is skipping it.
Do you think film school makes any kind of contribution?
I have no idea. I mean, my brother was undergrad film, and so it didn't really sort of.
Right.
I don't know how to educate him. It didn't launch him as far as connections are.
Did you always know that the way you'd break into the film business would be through writing and screenwriting?
Yeah, it was sort of the design to write in order to direct, and that's really worked out like a gem so far. No, it's easier when you're trying to break in if you have a ream of blank paper and a computer than trying to corral 30 people and get $50,000 to make a short.
Right.
So I took the lazy way, and here I am.
How many scripts did you write before the first one got produced?
I'd written 5. There were Best Laid Plans and Ravenous, which broke all sorts of box office records in Bavaria. Had both been written and sort of and around for 2 years before they were sold.
Okay.
And then commenced photography within like a week of each other. And they were probably the 4th and 5th scripts I'd written. And
were those first 5 kind of run-ups to?
I didn't think of them as exercises.
Right.
I think you have to think of them like, oh, this will be the script that goes out and sells, and then I'll be.
But looking back, those are the ones you broke something up.
2 of them in college, and 1 of them sort of right out of college, and then. But I think the first one, Ravenous, was the 4th script I'd written, and it was the first one that I felt like this actually feels like I'm a real writer now because I was not paying attention to any of the rules you learn about screenwriting.
Right.
Or like I was sort of actually. I don't want to say beyond the structure, but where I threw away
the conventional wisdom.
Convention and just sort of wrote something that I thought would be really interesting, and then derived a lot of things from other movies and made it less interesting.
Right. Well, there's that famous story, that famous story about Orson Welles coming from radio and not having made a movie ever before Citizen Kane. He just kind of, once he got to Hollywood, just holed up in a screening room and watched every single print of every movie he could get his hands on.
I heard it was Stagecoach like 25 times. That he watched John Ford's Stagecoach over and over and over again.
That's good too.
Yeah. But my film education was not in college.
Right.
It was growing up because my father was a film fan, so I was going to the Rialto Theater in South Pasadena where Tim Robbins kills the screenwriter and the player.
Nice
back when it was a revival theater, and so I saw everything for the first time there and was quoting Deliverance when I was 10 and didn't realize what squeal like a pig meant. But
now you do.
And
that's the important thing.
And it shaped me personally too, obviously, which again, that's totally false. Sorry.
You have a degree in English, but you wanted to be a director. Do you tend to think in pictures when you write, or are you more like language based?
A little bit in pictures. Sometimes I think more in time. What's the rhythm of a scene or a sequence?
Okay.
And so sometimes when you're writing for a director, you just get a sense. Like if I've written a movie for Ridley Scott, and therefore there are some considerations of like, well, if Ridley's going to direct this, then you can go a little, set the scene in something a little bigger. But mostly when I'm just writing sort of in a vacuum, I don't consider it so much as visually as temporally. Right.
Other directors whose style kind of inspire you, like in terms of you wanting to be a director from the beginning? Are there filmmakers that kind of like have the careers that you hope to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Billy Wilder is the patron saint of the writer-director.
Right.
But simply as a director, I would say him and William Wyler, as far as the guys who did a diversity of genre and comedic and dramatic and romantic, and did them all, did one of each one pretty much superlatively.
Is that kind of eclecticism important to you when you're thinking about your
Yeah,
own?
I mean, I think you can end up getting labeled here as far as like you're a horror guy, and having a very successful career. I mean, I think Hitchcock's Mr. and Mrs. Smith, with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, is a very well done comedy, but like.
That was great of him to come back from the dead and do that movie.
Yeah, I hope he comes back again to do Frenzy again. So Hal Ashby is somebody who, just as far as a temperament, who I'd aspire to. The movies that affected me as a kid that probably got me into it were John Sturges movies, of all people, and Jaws and.
Well, that's the pictures you mentioned and the directors you mentioned. They all, even within their body of work, had more artsy movies and more commercial movies. Do you differentiate when you sit down to write a script for yourself, saying this will be a smaller movie, this will be a big commercial movie? Does that even enter into your mind when you start?
Yeah, I think there's always a way of doing a commercial movie smartly, and the aspiration is to, if you're going to do that, to try to do the best version. It was my favorite movies, Jaws, and others that I'll think of once we've stopped filming, are all really commercial movies done exceedingly well, and that was the ambition, at least with Ocean's 11, and with Matchstick Men, it was sort of the ambition at the start was to do a sort of an emotional drama with some commercial context in it, which hadn't necessarily been like I don't think Matchstick Men was necessarily a movie that's obvious for a studio, but contemporarily, I would say in the late 70s, they were, Robert Benton was making movies like that all the time.
On a movie like that, how important is it to get Ridley Scott and Nick Cage to kind of be the ambassadors of material that's about character or about adults? It's not about things blowing up, or you know.
It makes a huge difference. I mean, once Ridley was on, it was a movie, and we sort of flirted with Bob Zemeckis, who ended up executive producing it, and that just sort of gives you political cover for the rest of the show, and then you're sort of your political job of sort of getting the movie. Then the only one is sort of selling it.
Now, when you say political job, like, what do you mean?
Getting the studio to put up the money, which I don't know if you have any experience with that.
I stole the money for my movies.
I mean, from your position, would you have made Matchstick Men for $40 million if Ridley Scott wasn't directing it?
No, I would have had the writer direct it.
Oh, thanks very much. We should work together.
Walk me through the process. Like, so was that an original script that you and your brother wrote? And then the studio bought it and then went out and pursued Ridley Scott?
It was a book by Eric Garcia, which I'd gotten through my agency, and they didn't tell me that it had actually already made the tour of the town. And then sort of we went back on another little tour, and it was picked up by Warner Brothers, who we were about to go into production on Ocean, so I was sort of in their good graces at the moment, and then sort of very brief pitch of saying, here's the book, and here are a couple of changes. And then went ahead and wrote the first couple of drafts sort of without any involvement. I sort of attached myself as a producer because I like to inflate my sense of self. With Sean Bailey, who's an old friend. And then once we'd gotten the first couple drafts done, that got sent to Bob Zemeckis, who wanted to make some changes. We made those. Then he looked at that in Polar Express and thought, which one will look better?
Happy Meals.
In motion
capture.
Motion capture. Yeah, and he went with the other one. And then luckily I ran into Ridley Scott at a cocktail party and asked him what he was doing, and he said, I've got this enormous movie that's going to take 9 months to prep, and I asked him if he wanted to do something that was local. And
did you have the script with you at the cocktail party?
I didn't, but it was in his hands the next morning. So, and then he signed on, and then it was sort of like a clean ride from there.
So would you say that's an uncommonly positive experience?
Yeah, and working with Ridley was an uncommonly positive experience. He's actually the most professional person I've ever worked with.
On a film like Ocean's 11, which is a remake, even though the original film is quite awful.
Yeah.
Did you have to deal with like just the reverence that people have for that original film because of that cast, or how much attention did you guys pay to what we're following in those footsteps? It has to be of a certain quality, which was going to be anyway, but did the original movie send you in any direction, or you just kind of like went your own way from the beginning? What
attracted me about it was it was the sort of movie from that era that should have been one of my favorites, like The Magnificent Seven or The Great Escape, and that it has, I don't know if there's a name for the genre, but sort of the group of men buddy movie. And I had never seen the movie before when it was offered, and I watched it, and I didn't like it. But I thought I wanted to see this movie, or my idea of what this movie was going to be was interesting. I think I made a decision somewhat to like throw out because the original movie is about a bunch of army buddies who decide to knock over Vegas, and so and what I was more interested in doing something in the vein of The Sting, or basically all those Sturgis movies, and so sort of threw out that original context and read like every Damon Runyon short story available, simply because I wanted to get that kind of
it has a very Runyon-esque,
the whimsical gangster element that he has into it. And then when Steven came onto it, I think it was just a decision of no Sinatra references.
Right.
Nobody's replicating anybody from the original.
Right. Do you write with actors in mind?
Yeah, sometimes dead ones. I mean, I would say Bill
Right.
Holden was Danny Ocean
Right.
in my mind, or I can't remember who was the Nick Cage character in Matchstick Men.
I mean, even though you're writing with dead actors in mind, do you even believe in this idea that you could write things into a script that you know will attract actors? Like, and with your experience now, do you fashion your scripts a certain way because you know an actor's going to be reading it, a director's going to be reading it? Are there things that you can hook in to those that make it easier for people to commit? Or are they looking for things like the big monologues or whatever?
I think first and foremost, if you write a really compelling story, everyone will be involved in that.
Right.
Want to be involved in that because that's, I think, what people want to do is just be part of a good story. But on top of that, I think there are ways of writing rules for movie stars in which you give them less exposition, give them good lines, usually briefer ones.
Is there a part of the writing a screenplay that's more difficult for you than other parts?
Yeah, coming up with a story. I mean,
I hear it's a key part of the process.
It is a key part of the process. Usually, I mean, they're.
You'd be surprised how many people forget that.
Yeah, I can name some sequels of movies that they forgot that part. I can't. I'm not thinking of anything specific.
I understand.
So.
Do you outline in the beginning?
A little bit. I mean, I don't write down and outline that much because I actually either because I'm lazy or because I just want to sort of get to the writing process. But there are first acts of movies that are plentiful and usually I try to get at least to sort of what the launching point of the third act is going to be before I start anything, because I've started a couple of scripts where I've gotten about half in and thought, I don't know, like.
Oh, so that's it. You get through about half of it and you realize you don't have a way out.
Or like a good idea that doesn't just keep it plateaued.
Okay.
I think the first draft of Ravenous, which I'll just talk in shorthand because I know everyone's familiar with the plot. I'd gotten about halfway through and realized I've my protagonist caught up in the mountains and there's a villain out there and I could sustain this for 40 minutes of them just
circling each other,
and then the notion was like end it, get back to sort of restart the movie, which is something that I thought. The most important aspect, I think, most important influence of Tarantino's work is that his sort of reintroduction of I would say starting a movie over mid-movie, which is I mean some of my favorite movies. Psycho does that, in which you're following gently for the first 40 minutes, and then here's something completely else.
Tarantino, I guess, literally does that and replays the beginning, or a sequence in Jackie Brown begins. Just from another point of view, there's something we've seen before from a different point of view.
Yeah.
Do you like that use of playing with structure?
Yeah, I think it's got to be done for another purpose other than.
Look at me, I'm so clever. Right?
Yeah, and I think also there was sort of as almost as a storytelling style, it had its window, and it'll come back again. But now I think the big thing is I don't know what the next big thing is.
When you approach a scene that deals in something you have no firsthand knowledge in, how important is research to you? Or do you just kind of wing it, or do you go out and experience it firsthand?
I do some research, usually find it useless and end up lying.
Okay.
I did a lot of research.
I have a sneaking suspicion writers just make it up.
Yeah, and I think you should. As far as like, there are two different things of like researching what security is like at a Vegas casino. I did that. It's all about Uzis and armored trucks, and there's not that much money that's kept there, and therefore was a tough place to have a lighthearted caper without guns going off.
So that was the idea of one vault for 3 casinos, an invention of the
movie? That's an invention that there has to be enough money in the casino for 10 times the amount of chips on the floor is a fabrication.
I bought it all.
Thanks very much. That people in Las Vegas are that pretty. I mean, it's all a lie. But then there's the sort of thing of like if you're writing, if your character is the President of the United States and you've never been the President of the United States, there's some.
You're free to speculate.
You're free to speculate, and kind of you just have to use your imagination. What would we like to be elected in there? And
are you going to run for office someday?
No, I'm not.
How important do you think it is to stay real in the situations you create? Like, if apart from research, in your work I notice you don't go off on like weird stylish tangents that as iconoclastic as some of the characters are, as really very original as the stories are, they still seem grounded in a reality where you feel like, this could be happening next door or down the block, where they feel like real people. Is that something that just comes naturally to you? Do you make a
I
concerted
think it's
effort?
just sort of my taste.
Right.
I've never been a big comic book
Okay.
kid. I prefer Close Encounters to
Right.
Star Wars, simply because that's an Earthbound
I imagine
movie.
the Godfather movies.
The Godfathers. I'm trying to think if there was. Okay, strange reference. Sorcerer. I
Sure.
like I think is a fun action movie because it's actually very gritty and based in reality. And that's just sort of my taste. So I wouldn't know how to write really a comic book movie.
Now that they're so in vogue, do you get approached to work on that?
Yeah, and usually I think about it for 5 minutes and then I realize that I would be bad at it.
Right.
Why do you have one? Because
No, I'm not allowed to work inside the studio system anymore.
They're paying big money for us.
What kind of outside input do you seek out, or do you not seek out any outside input in terms of when you've got a script that's almost ready to go? Do you get opinions from friends or family or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't really have a discipline about it, but I make the mistake sometimes of showing fragments of scripts to people, usually because I just want a pat on the head and like, oh, it's wonderful. Like, you take a painting or a picture to your mom when you're a kid. So you try to not do that, and then there are a couple. I'm friends with Scott Frank and Richard LaGravenese, and the last thing I wrote, I sort of spent a day with each of them, getting their notes, and not only because they have the credibility of having actually done it.
Scott, of course, has written Out of Sight
and Get Shorty, and
Richard's written Fisher King,
and
adapted Bridges of Madison County.
Yes. Right? Anyway, both swell guys, and also really good mentors as far as if I have a professional problem, not a creative problem, but a professional problem where I need the advice of somebody who isn't getting 10 or 5% of what I'm making. They're usually the guys I ask what to do, and they usually say, give the money back.
More for them.
Yeah.
How do you approach writing women? Do you talk to women?
You know, I knew there was a reason I was doing that. Could you come back to my apartment? I'm researching a role. Yeah, I think it's
like the daughter character in Matchstick Men is a wonderfully drawn character.
Neither my brother nor I have been a 14-year-old girl, so again, it's like research. We didn't go and interview a lot of 14-year-old girls. We just sort of try to put ourselves in those shoes.
That would look bad. If you had to compare yourselves, you and your brother Nick, to the fictional Donald and Charlie Kaufman, who's Donald and who's Charlie?
I'm Donald, he's Charlie.
Okay.
My brother's much smarter than I am, much more literate, and I'm much better at being in Hollywood than he is. He's written an excellent script about the author of Under the Volcano, Malcolm Lowry, which has tons of references to Dante's Inferno. Put that on a poster.
Right.
He's actually a much better writer than I am. I'm a better screenwriter, I think, and God, he's going to kill me when he says this, simply because I have a better sense of marketplace, I think.
Also, I mean, you seem to have a handle on you know, there's limited space in a screenplay, and you're one of these writers where people go like, great characters, like great dialogue. Like, how do you find the space in a screenplay for the establishment of really memorable characters?
That's I think the great challenge of screenwriting, why I think it's a comparable craft to novel writing or poetry or any other sort of writing, is because you have to establish things with such an economy.
Everybody thinks they can do it too. Everybody thinks they can write a novel, write a screenplay.
Yeah. I haven't tried to write a novel, so I don't know what I speak about then, but I do think there's a great deal of craft of being able to set up characters in a situation in the time you have with the sort of the structure of a script. And I think that's the thing I'm most proud of or most impressed by in other scripts I read, when they can pull you into a story and into a character with such an economy of language, dialogue, and scenes.
Do you think it's natural? Like, I know for myself, a lot of movies I don't remember the plot years and years later, but I remember the character moments. I remember you know, the character moments that stand out. Do you think that that's a sign of a movie having really strong characters? Not necessarily a weak story, but just really strong characters that are paired up with the right actor, and then it just, you know, that's what sticks with you.
I mean, I'd be curious to go back and read some scripts that are like, let's say, Cuckoo's Nest, and which I think is a marvelously written movie, and then sort of lucked out by having Nicholson at this moment at this time. And if there are marvelously written movies that didn't get Jack Nicholson at that moment at that time.
You cited the scene in Matchstick Man where Roy comes home. He's getting ready to start his new con, and he's surprised to find his daughter there as a particularly strong scene for you for that movie. I mean, how important was that scene to the rest of the story or writing that script?
I think I picked that one because it's emblematic of the whole movie in that you've established Roy, Nick Cage's character, as obsessive compulsive and a clean freak and having no real personal relationships in his life. And this is the first night where he's got to start this big con, and in comes Angela, Alison Lohman's character. And so it's not necessarily, I think, the best scene
there's a lot going on.
But it's sort of like that's where all the movie kind of comes together. Of here he's got to balance the con and the daughter and an outside force in his sort of inner sanctum. And I think that scene is in the book. I haven't read it long enough to know like how much, but I always sort of sense that if that scene didn't gel, that was an indication of everything before it not necessarily being where it is.
How did you approach the writing of it? Do you decide what the plot of the scene is first, or the theme, or what's going on physically, or?
I think you start off instinctively of just sort of because I think if you intellectualize it, if you analyze it going in.
You could kill it before it starts.
Yeah, that line about analyzing humor is like dissecting a frog. Right. No one enjoys it, and the frog dies. I think if you sort of, if you start off by saying, "Well, I want to make a movie that's really about man's inhumanity to man," and so like, well, I usually have to start with story, and then I think the most important thing about writing is during that process coming upon the clarity and I don't want to say simplicity, but but I'll say simplicity of what the movie is really about. And this doesn't come out very well in the film, I think, but in Ocean's 11, I think I was on page 100 before I realized this is the story about a guy pulling off a ludicrous heist simply to show his wife that he loves, his ex-wife that he loves.
So that was a late in the process?
Yeah, it was sort of like, but I started off like, oh, this is a big heist movie.
Right.
And they'll be, okay, and here's the girl. But then I thought, okay, this is actually what it's about.
Two of the most memorable scenes for me in that film are when Brad Pitt realizes there's an ulterior motive, and he says to George Clooney, "We can't split her 9 ways."
Right.
You know, and then the scene later in the movie when George Clooney goes, "Does he make you laugh?" And she goes, "Well, he doesn't make me cry."
Right.
In any movie about a relationship or a love story, those would be standout scenes. But you married it to a heist plot, which is great because you're saying the love story really leapt out late in the writing process.
Yeah, it's also I think there was some inspiration from that from the movie David Lynch movie The Straight Story. There was something inspiring about that in which you get what the protagonist is doing through the whole movie, and in the last 20 seconds you understand why he's doing it, like on a whole deeper level. And I think after I realized that was what Ocean's 11 was about, I went back and just made sure that was sort of clarified that through the movie.
So you backtracked it after.
Yeah,
it left
but I think I almost think if I started out writing that, then I almost would have fucked up the rest of it.
Oh, that's interesting. Going back to Roy and that scene in Matchstick Men, did you have any surprises in the writing of that script in terms of, oh, hey, this is about this now, or was it pretty much always what it was going to be?
I think Roy's psychology got deeper and deeper as we went. Both my brother and I are a little crazy, and have a relationship a little bit like Roy and Frank, Sam Rockwell's character in it. And so I think the farther we got into it, the more specific Roy became. And then when Nick Cage came on, it got real specific.
Right.
Nick added a lot. Nick Cage, sorry, not my brother, added a lot of minutia almost to Roy's.
Was he your first choice always?
Yeah, pretty much. Yaphet Kotto was sort of always in talks, but
he was busy.
Yeah.
Were there challenges to writing that scene with Roy discovering the daughter? Like,
writing Angela was sort of tough.
Was the book a help? Did any?
Yeah, and the book is a help, and I think it's a good book, and sometimes it's a help to say, okay, there's some scenes from the book where it's just we were typing, and there's some scenes where you go, okay, that doesn't quite work with what we're doing, but it's almost good to have something to
someone else's attempt at something.
I mean, it's always, I think, easier to rewrite than to face a blank page.
Is adapting for another medium more difficult than rewriting either your own script or someone else's script?
Adapting from another medium can be as difficult as writing original, depending on what your source material is. Because if it's really schematic, then you're pretty much inventing. But Matchstick Men was, I think, easier in some ways because there was so much material already there that I thought was working quite well. Right. And then there were some big things that we had to sort of flesh out. And our first draft, we actually went 180 degrees away from the book because the book has the sort of the larger con. And when I got to the end of the book, I thought, I might have had a sense this was coming, and this is a downer. Right. And actually, I just had an interest in writing a Robert Benton movie that was emotional. So our first draft was take that con out and make it a what we called, I think, a Clint Eastwood like screen door movie where you felt like it was just you were just doing a straight movie about crooked people. It ended up being a crooked movie about crooked people, but our first draft was we're just going to do a Kramer versus Kramer, straight down the middle emotional drama that happens to be about con men.
Do you think you'll be adapting more books in the future? Do you like that process?
Yeah, I like doing it.
Did Nick find that book first, or did you guys find
it
it
we got
together?
to send it at the same time.
Okay.
We had the same agent, and so that's how that came about.
When you write, do you do anything outside the screenplay to help you? Do you do character bios, or do you go outside just like writing the script in terms of preparation?
It sort of matters what. Like on Ocean's 11, there wasn't a whole lot of kind of having to sink down into the real grit of what Danny Ocean was about.
Was that fun? Because it was just like it looked like characters just no arcs. Everybody's like their own people.
Fuck you, man. You know? It's subtle, but it's there.
Okay.
No, it's a lot of fun there because they're.
Brad's wardrobe was to die for.
Yeah, it was. Michael Kaplan, nice job. There's sort of a different craft, I think, between writing a fully grown character, like I think I would.
Yeah.
I'll use Roy Waller, Nick Cage's character as an example, and a movie star role, which I would say Danny Ocean or Rusty Ryan, George and Brad are. And actually, and I wouldn't necessarily say that the movie star one is necessarily easier. It can be a little more fun.
Right.
But
it's different.
But it's sort of like it's a different kind of craft.
Right.
So for Roy Waller, for that character, there was a lot sort of sinking into it and viewing every scene through his eyes, whereas with Danny or Rusty, it was kind of coming up with the best gesture. Right. It was sort of, I saw somewhere recently that like Steve McQueen would practice opening a car door like 50 times before doing a scene, and
that kind of attention to style.
And it works. I mean, that's why he's a great movie star. He's not necessarily wasn't the greatest actor, but it's a craft into itself, and I think totally worthwhile. Not to demean it at all. And with Oceans, it was sort of trying to get the cool down for those guys. And then also for the Carl Reiner and Elliot Gould roles, sort of coming up with, not necessarily fleshed out because they're secondary characters.
Do you think those kind of movies, back in the 70s or even before, do you think that the studios were better at making fluff that was good and had quality? Were they better at it back then than we seem to be, or not you? They seem to be now?
I don't know because I was in an executive capacity back in the 70s. What have I said?
You've seen old films. I know you rent DVDs and watch them.
I'm curious what you think about this too, because
that's like a lament. Everyone's like, oh, things were better back in the day.
Yeah, and there's a lot of shit that was made back then.
Yeah.
There are a lot of bad movies that were made in the 70s too.
People forget, we just remember the classics, but that whole, any given year, 75, 78, there were like 30 movies behind the one we remember that were just as bad, probably.
I think maybe in that landscape, I'm not sure how confused the studio was. Right. There was some sort of fear because it wasn't the 50s where they were losing everything to TV, and so they threw everything at.
This was a true sea change in people's taste, and they just,
Well,
what I've noticed is, that what used to be B movies, and B movies can be fun, are like nowadays, like A pictures, and there seems to be less room to do a Matchstick Men now, or even with the attachments, it's like it used to be people wanted 5 10-pole movies a year to hold up the rest. 10-pole used to mean the pole that holds up the tent, and the 10 was the rest of the slate.
Now February is 10-pole.
All pole. Yeah. Now it's everybody wants 10 10-poles and 15 10-poles, and that is a little bit of the conglomerate effect on things. And
I think there are some B movies that are done with A-list people that are done perfectly well. Right. And I'm wondering how much there's an attitude within studios of we can get our tentpole movies for a little cheaper, without naming names. There are just some movies that feel like that were sort of cut price tentpoles, and that became profitable, and there are no back end players, and so it's all better for it's bottom line better for.
Well, I guess that can backfire on you if you go cheap with the first film and what could have been a franchise. You kind of make sure there's no number 2, 3, 4, 5, which is
you kill the golden goose.
Yeah.
You have a reputation from New Line as having been somewhat maverick-ish, and I'm curious, what was your attitude going into your job at New Line, because you did take a lot of risks and.
It was a necessity with us. We couldn't afford to spend over a certain amount or have big movie stars, so you had to find material that could work in the marketplace without those stars and that kind of production value and budget. So, in a way, it was good that we were forced to do that because. I think the movies are better once we got a lot of money, and all went, it went crazy for a while.
Well, okay, let's take Seven, which is not an obvious studio movie and not everything ends well and not a pick-me-up, not a date movie. How much did you spend making it?
That was $33 million. That movie cost $33 million back in the day. Brad was $4 million.
Okay. How scared were you of making that movie at the time? Because that's a movie that harkens back to, I think, the 70s sort of adventurous film.
I don't know if we were scared, but I remember my boss coming out of the first screening of it just muttering like, it's a $33 million art film, it's a $33 million art film. Because it's a cop movie with no car chases, none of the traditional. Andy Kevin Walker, who wrote it, turned every convention kind of on its head. But there was a sneaking suspicion that the script's provocativeness would help it survive in the marketplace. And it is fun to catch talent on the way up, right at that right time, before it becomes so expensive. And
when Freeman was young and just out of acting
before he was
school.
God as a voice.
You should have done more voiceover at the end about
Well, then we'll
germs.
go back, now given his stature, we'll go back and re-record a whole new track. Put a little Blade Runner action on it.
That was actually one of the scripts I read when I was struggling. That Andy Kevin Walker, and I read it before the movie, that I thought this is pretty much word for word perfect.
Okay. Now, do you make it a point of reading other writers' works in town? And
I try to, because you get sent a lot of stuff to rewrite, but it's not great. That's why you're getting sent it, and so sort of to get almost sort of stimulated, not necessarily competitively, but just to know what is being done with good screenwriting. I think. So if you
hear a script is great, do you go try to get it and just see what's up?
Yeah, I haven't heard it much lately. The script I wrote with a friend, Sean Bailey, which I wrote 10 years ago, and is that close to production right now.
Oh, is that Solace?
That's Solace, the one that is kind of teetering on whether it'll get made right now. But
now that script's been around and been praised for years and years and years. What has been the problem with describe what that movie's about?
It's
in 5 words or less.
Seven, but different.
Seven meets
my
dog Skip.
Something that's derivative of Seven. No.
Was it written before Seven though?
No.
Okay. Thank you for being honest.
Yeah. But what happened was, because I think you were gone, but New Line bought it, and
I was just leaving.
And they sent it to Fincher as a possible sequel to Seven.
I do remember this. Yeah.
Did you do this?
No, I remember being told about it.
Okay, because this was because they sent it to Fincher, who instantly passed. Sent it to Morgan Freeman and said, "We'll pay you more money than you've ever made before to reprise Somerset and play this role in this movie." And Fincher called him up and said, "Don't fucking do it," and he passed. But something I admired about the creative integrity of actually trying to kill a sequel to your best movie without for the best reasons. Because I do think it would have, not that I'm not proud of Solace, it was an odd fit to be crammed in as a sequel to Seven.
So Solace is a serial killer thriller, and you were saying it was just about to get made.
Or right now, like they're probably somebody's phoning somebody about it.
And do we call that a blinking green light or a yellow light or elevated
green light that's got a filter,
like a David Lynchian green light.
Yeah, and somebody's got the plug in their hand, like waiting for a signal.
Gotcha. Now, is that frustrating? Not specifically that project, but everyone, I guess, realizes that so many things have to line up to get a movie made, and it's a wonder anything ever happens. But when you're right there and it's about to go, and then something screws up, how do you deal with that?
I think you're always holding your breath, like something. Somebody's going to get ill, or somebody's going to have just a bad reaction to something, or wake up one day and go, you know what, no. And actually, in that scenario, I haven't had like anything like this where we were 5 weeks from starting production, and then somebody got a little started backing out.
Since writing is such a solitary process, was working with your brother or any partner, is that easier? Is it more difficult? Is it?
It gets tricky when you have a difference of opinion.
Right.
It gets really tricky when you have a difference of opinion and you're in the same family. I guess you do have to say it's only a movie.
Right.
But
would you write with a partner again, family member or not?
Yeah, I think so. But it would under a specific. So I wrote with Sean Bailey, but that was sort of 10 years ago.
Have you ever rewritten other people's screenplays? Are you in that script doctor category of writers?
I've done it a few times. I've done a couple of rewrites when the movie is actually shooting, and there's something very liberating about that because you don't have to worry about the development process of the studio notes and so forth. The
work is very specific, what they ask.
It's like grab ammo and bring it to the front line because we need it now, and therefore it's all the bullshit is cleared out, and it really becomes just about what is going to work when we shoot this in 5 days.
And have you been happy with the work you've done in that regard?
For the most part. I mean, you have to sort of. It comes down mostly to sort of who you're working with and whether your tastes align and whether you have the same idea.
Where do you find inspiration for the things you write?
Books, not scripts, and not watching movies, but probably thinking about movies. I think when you go to sort of watch a movie and think, okay, I want to do something that's like Raiders, and you watch it, I think that actually stunts the imagination. But actually, if you just movies are I think if you're a movie lover, you enjoy kind of remembering movies sometimes even more than sort of revisiting them. Or they're certainly, I think, better in memory than when you revisit some things.
Can you watch your favorite movies over and over again, or do you get tired of them at a certain point?
Yeah, there are some things that I've sort of run into the ground by watching, and some things that I mean, I guess just going back to Deliverance now, as a kid, I never understood why they wanted to bury the dead hillbilly and just go tell the police. I thought, that's stupid. They should just go tell the cops. And now I totally understand why they're not going to tell
Well, that movie in particular, you take more from it as an adult than you do as a child.
Yeah, for reasons. No spoilers.
We have a little exercise for you that I think is going to greatly benefit your chance of getting a movie on screen next year.
Vinyasa?
It's called The Object. Norris, the tray. We have an object carefully chosen by us on this tray. You will look at the object. You will invent a story about the object. And then you'll tell us why your story was your story.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
You got it?
Your object, sir.
I'm screwed. Thank you. Wow. It's a good piece. I keep on like getting stuck on somehow a guy is not handcuffed but sort of locked to the grate at the bottom of a swimming pool with this, and the key is like halfway up the slope to the shallow end, and there's water pouring. It's an empty swimming pool, but there's water pouring in, and so you have a set piece of this guy. I don't know how he got locked there.
Well, that's interesting. So you went right to a thriller scenario. You went to a guy locked down to the bottom of a swimming pool.
Well, this is, I think, too sort of atavistic. No, it just doesn't look comedic, this lock.
No, you picked the right genre, I think.
It looks like either horror or some sort of.
I went thriller.
Or some sort of period action.
Like a Pirates thing?
Like a Pirates thing or a National Treasure.
Do you ever free associate like that in terms of coming up with your own ideas?
On occasion, I've tried to do something where I'll force myself to sort of stand in a room and try to come up with some situation where, not to turn it into a script, but just to kind of create a situation and then try to build on it. And I guess going back to the swimming pool, I had one where there's like that I just thought of a groom and the best man are outside by a pool, and they're about to get in the car to go to the church for the guy to get married, and the groom is giving the best man his ring that he's got to give him to him in the ceremony, and the best man bottles it and goes into the deep end of the pool. And so here they are in their suits, and it's sort of like, okay, what do you do then?
Right.
And then like just try to build on it. I mean, there's no movie in that, or not a good one. but you can run with it if you like.
Well,
take it into Amy.
This exercise reminds me of how hard it is to show the writer's process visually to people that aren't familiar with how a writer does it because they're not writers themselves. I keep thinking of that scene from World According to Garp, which took it's about a writer that obviously that genre right now is about Garp, who's a writer. But the way they tried to visualize it in that movie is Robin Williams is turning a corner and sees a guy and a piano hanging in the window, and then they reenact his short story about the magic gloves and playing the piano. And in a really good movie, that is the one cripplingly corny sequence because it's very hard to show. Yeah. You know what goes on in a writer's mind. The profession of writing used to be, I think, the most uncinematic profession. Now I think it's anybody working on the internet or at a computer. That's dollar, actually, of like, click, as opposed to somebody typing. Aren't there programs that will write the script for you, basically, almost? If you plug in genre and a few like key elements, it'll spit out a screenplay or something? Where is this available? Is it online, or, I mean... It's not like crack. You can't start abusing it. Oh, that's too bad. I'll find a way. Are questions like, where do you get your ideas hard to answer? Yeah, because they come from everywhere. Ravenous came from, I was reading The Thin Man. And there's midway through the book, there's 2 pages about Alfred Packard, this guy who was a cannibal in Colorado. And I was reading that, and I thought, there is a sort of an adventure story to tell there, and I never finished reading The Thin Man. Then that sort of just sparked... Now, Ravenous was one of those scripts that didn't it make a few best unproduced screenplay lists before it got produced? Like that was a very talked about writing sample around town? Did you get a lot of meetings off that? Yeah, I got a lot of that and Best Laid Plans sort of opened doors for me. And it's hard to tell when you're in those meetings or doing interviews with executives and producers whether they're lying to you to your face. So if you say, "Oh, that was a really famously great script," I have no idea. Have you been lied to openly and busted people on it? Like, do executives actually think they can get away with stuff like that? One meeting I remember where I'd just done a sort of a polish on a script on an original, and the executive said, "Well, I think this, like, you still haven't gotten the emotionalism of this, the emotion right in this." I said, "Well, this is what I did in this draft, and can you tell me what is it about that fails or succeeds, or what else I need to do?" And the executive said, "Well, I didn't really read the draft as closely as I should have. Let me go back to it." And basically, like, in the meetings, cop to not having read it, but having gotten notes from a junior executive. This executive made a choice not to say, when you came in the room, I should have read it, I didn't have time to read it. Here are some notes. He was calling me to the woodshed to say this needs to be better. He gave you a phony note. And then he actually had no knowledge of what was different. Now, does an experience like that color you on just the notes thing in general, or do you still kind of like... I knew he was a cocksucker going into the meeting. Yeah, I mean, that's why I give my scripts to Scott Frank and Richard LeGravin, is because, one, they're not treating me politically because they have no reason to. They can actually, and they have, for me, the integrity and the authority to say this sucks, and from them, I'll know it's true, and not just some... because there are a lot of things, and you would know better than I, that inform why projects go ahead other than their creative merits, or even commercial merits at times. Political relationships and star attachments, which sometimes aren't it used to be in the oldie days, studio heads could actually stop a star from making a bad movie or the wrong choice. And now, I know from my days as an executive, if a star said, "I'll do it," even if you were like not so sure about the material, you feel that desire to have a movie for a release date, and you just kind of hope for the best. Yeah, and I mean, for your job, you're right to do it. Maybe the problem is because I don't know if anybody looks at any position as long term anymore. I mean, what's the half-life of a studio executive now? I was at New Line for 20 years. For the studios now, if you're a head of production for more than 4 or 5 years, for 2 tours of duty, it's a big thing. You're doing a great job. I think that there's a new
ethical kind of paradigm in Hollywood called "fuck you" too.
That gets back to rewriting. I mean, when you were doing the rewriting, did you ever talk to the original writer or leave that up to the studio? Or how does that work?
Well, if you're rewriting another screenwriter, I think it's good etiquette at least to call him and make sure that he's not getting screwed.
So writers instinctually will do something nicer for people than almost anybody else in the business will do.
Some. I think it always just depends on the person, not necessarily the job. But I don't think I treated at the get-go Eric Garcia, the author of Matchstick Men, very well because I just didn't talk to him. I wanted to be
your own voice.
Yeah, mercenary with the script,
right.
And therefore I didn't want to feel like I'm going to piss him off, and so I just stayed away. Whereas there are some scripts where I've rewritten where I tried to. Where I really sort of respect what's been done before me, and so try not to piss all over the previous writer.
Now, conversely, have you ever been rewritten?
Yeah, sometimes happily, or usually on something where I come in for a couple of weeks, and I'm not the first writer, and I'm not going to be the last, and the guy who's after me isn't going to be the last either. And there's something liberating about not writing something that's not yours. In some of the weeklies I've done, where it's just about getting something that will work and not necessarily being precious about it at all. And then I've been rewritten a couple of times on things that are very precious to me, and 5 months of drinking didn't help. Didn't help much. But I think the 6th month, that did it.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Have you had an original taken away from you in terms of another voice being put on it or writing or?
Yeah, I'll use an early example. On Best Laid Plans, which is primarily a movie about the main character during the course of the story, whores out his girlfriend to sleep with a friend of his so that he can calm that guy out of a possession. And at the end of the script, all the plans have sort of gone awry. The best laid plans. And
clever.
And the girl sort of turns to the protagonist and says, "We're through," and walks away from him. Sort of, which is, I think, sort of was the morally appropriate ending. And even though he's not a bad guy. Anyway, the movie gets made. I don't think it's very good from the opening credits on.
When did you know that it was going in a direction that you wouldn't have chosen if you were directing it, or that you didn't see when you wrote it? Like at what point in the process did you know the ship was sinking?
God, it's tough to tell because it was actually that was being shot while Ravenous was being shot.
Okay, so you weren't there.
And one of them was in Bakersfield, California, and the other one was in Prague. And
That's a hell of a commute.
And Ravenous had fired a director 2 weeks in, and everything was going smoothly on Best Laid Plans. Unfortunately, it was sort of going so smoothly because it was like it was turning into a late night Cinemax movie. Anyway, so then I finally saw the movie, and there was one sequence which is supposed to take place in a car with 2 characters, and they get carjacked, but it's a surprise. There's a window that gets smashed, and they get pulled out, and it's supposed to be this big shocking moment. But instead, it was sort of like done in this long, cool tracking shot in which you see the car, and then over ADR, the guy is saying, "Wait, someone's coming," and the carjacking is like done from a distance. I thought,
yeah,
something got missed here. Anyway,
is that when you decided you wanted to be a director, or did you?
I wanted to, but before I realized how important it was at that point.
Important because it's hard to turn over things and lose control of them.
Yeah, everything gets rewritten, and sometimes they get by a director, and at every stage the composer comes in and rewrites it. It's not necessarily what you had in mind, but sometimes that improves your work. Ridley Scott improved my work and brought a whole visual sense to it that I never would have brought, and therefore happy because of it. So the ending of Best Laid Plans, the movie's no good. They test it. It doesn't test very well. They say we need a happy ending on this, and I say you can't do it. And they say thank you for coming. And they call somebody up and say, how would you like 2 free tickets to the premiere of the new Star Wars, which is the first of the new series? And they said, yeah, all right, I'll do a day. And so there's.
But now they're giving out graft and gifts instead of even paying for people.
And so there's a happy ending on that, and that was painful because it was something that had started with me, and I'd given it to the producers in the studio, and then all of a sudden everybody was at the party but me, and that's happened one at a time, which was painful too.
When you're in charge, at least of your script, until it gets handed off to producers or director or executives, does your own rewriting process? Do you find that you refine as you go and you make things better with draft after draft after draft, or are you pretty much like you kick out the first draft and then it's that until you get a director and a producer and a
I think I'll scripts can be improved upon, there's the risk of while you're improving upon them that you're doing the reverse, and I think the responsibility of the writer is to sort of be the monitor of making sure the good ideas get in, and bad ideas stay out, and from whether they're from an executive, a director, or a star. It helps when you have a powerful director who, as Ridley is, who also Ridley has a very good sense of he can listen and sort of weed out the good from the bad, and is also very you can. For as much success as he's had, you can have a conversation with him and make a case, and he can put ego or whatever aside and sort of figure out whether you're full of shit or not. So it's helpful to have somebody as strong and also secure with their own talents.
What's the last screenplay you wrote? Literally, like the last one you worked on.
It's an original movie that got made, and I don't know if my name will be on it at the end of the day. But it was interesting because it was the most autobiographical thing I've written, and something akin to what happened on Best Laid Plans happened on it. It just didn't happen about the ending. It happened about the whole movie. Is
this, rumor has it?
It is, yeah.
And this was the thing you wrote for yourself to direct?
Wrote for myself to direct. Sort of got the thing going with basically my first choice of cast, and everything had like all the toys. Just the way I wanted them, and then sort of got yanked off it without a whole lot of warning or, let's just say, stated reason. Nobody looked at the footage cut together before I got canned. So, so it was a pretty like a hurtful experience, but I think will probably, hopefully down the line, be a constructive one as far as learning, being more politically, if not politically adept, but sensitive to torpedoes in the water.
Now, at what stage in the process was the film in when the change was made?
I was just finished the third week of shooting it. So we were like about a quarter done with shooting. And there had been like, it wasn't necessarily an easy shoot, but we weren't behind or over budget or anything. And to some degree, there was sort of a perfect storm. There were some elements that were unforeseeable, and then there were also just some bad blood that kind of had to get let.
Is that a big concern for new directors? Certainly, writers turn director. Are you just at the mercy of events that are bigger than you, and you don't know until it's too late, kind of a thing?
Yeah, I mean, it turned out I didn't think I was at the mercy as much as I was. The reason I thought that I was okay turned out to be actually the reason I was not okay. And I think in the aftermath, people said, well, it was, you were making a $40 million movie the first time out. It was too much money, and it got people nervous. It's like, Gary Ross made his first movie for about that. I think there are a lot of first-timers who've done fine with that much money. It wasn't really, I think, a budgetary issue. It was sort of more about political relationships, and there were a couple of sort of bigger fish in the pond, much bigger fish in the pond than me.
Can a writer do anything to safeguard against that?
Not sell your work. And I mean, there are two movies I'd rather have unmade than have them out there as they are.
Or I guess if you had, like, for example, if Ridley Scott, to return the favor to you for your screenplay, produced your movie and was your muscle between you and the forces of whatever. Yeah. That's, I guess, one way writers can approach, at least trying to like safeguard a little bit.
That was the theory on mine. It just, it wasn't Ridley Scott. That was the problem. I think there's probably to some degree, it's a bad idea to have a director as your producer, because if you're not doing it the way they would direct it.
You have a director leaning over your shoulder.
You have somebody over your shoulder.
How different is the first screenplay you ever wrote to that last screenplay you wrote? Like, what do you think has been the most progress in just in terms of your art or the types of stories you want to tell?
I think they become increasingly less about other movies.
Do you think you have to write a lot of bad screenplays before you write the first great one? Or can you be great right out of the box?
I think you could. I mean, you could sit down on a typewriter today and write type for 6 hours, and maybe like there'd be a sensational script. But I would be skeptical of that. I think it takes a lot of practice, and I think the mistake I think you have to have the ambition when you sit down to write of this will be a movie, and not just say, oh, I'm going to write the script so it can be bad and get it out of the way. I think in writing a first draft, you should never feel like, oh, this is what's going to be read. You should feel free enough to write badly, and then don't let anybody read it and go back and fix it up. But every time I sat down, when I was in college and wrote 2 scripts, I thought, I'm gonna be in the Fat City before I graduate, and then I'll just go out there and I'll have a deal. And then you're got Gabriel Byrne's boxers and
the best laid plans.
Yes.
Do you know at this point in your career what the best thing you've written is to yourself? Not final product or produced movie, but what you feel is like that's the best screenplay I've ever written.
I don't really have a favorite. I think. I mean, I guess the appropriate answer would be, oh, it was whatever the last thing I wrote was. But
we know how that turned out.
but also I'm not sure. I'm not really sure if that's that much better. I mean, I have prouder ownership in a way of Ravenous than I have of Ocean's 11 because Ravenous was purely original. And though I think I would say probably Matchstick Men may be I would say is maybe a better film than Ocean's 11, and therefore probably what I would perceive as my best produced work, and certainly the best experience I've had. Ocean's 11 might actually be more from me than Matchstick. So it gets mixed up based on how much proprietary feeling you have about it.
How disciplined are you when you're writing at home? Are you one of these guys who has a set routine and you write from this hour to that hour?
Oh, I should. but I screw it up constantly. And that's why I think I'm not more prolific, is because and a little bit of it is lazy, but a lot of it is there are a lot of diversions when you're working in Hollywood, when you're getting paid for it. First of all, there's money as a diversion because when I was starting out, there wasn't the absolute need of I won't be able to pay rent without I could not stop writing for a couple years and I'd be okay. Plus, there's the phone and sort of that as much as I think writing more than any other aspect of the industry is as close to a meritocracy as you can get. Meaning, if you don't have it on the page, as wonderful you are as you might be in a room, you're not going to cut it. Whereas there are some directors I know who've just been so charming and keep their relationship strong enough that they'll kind of perpetually work.
Now, do you write to music? Do you have any rituals that?
I think I listen. I try to get into a genre of music. For Ravenous was written to Bernard Herrmann and Jerry Goldsmith horror scores.
Oh, great score! Bernard Herrmann is such a great composer.
Yeah.
Do you mind the process of pitching? Like, I imagine now that you've had all these produced screenplays, you don't have to write a spec if you don't want to. Are you comfortable just going to studios and pitching ideas, or is that not a great process?
I'm fine doing it. It's not my favorite part of the gig, and I try to be as brief as possible. I think you try to go in there and give them a sense of
what the movie's going to be,
and what they can tell their sort of higher ups, and then what they can sort of say, this is how we sell it, or this is why it's commercial, and then if sort of avoid getting into the finer points, because in case you want to ditch them later. So they don't read the script and say, but you pitched this wonderful scene about the sofa factory.
I know when I was at New Line, I worked with a lot of first-time directors, whether they were writer-turned-directors or producer-turned-directors or actor-turned-directors. Do you think, though, that for the most part there's a skepticism of people coming in to direct from different mediums, from the writing or the producing or the acting? Is that something that's just built into the system, or is it different every studio?
Well, I'm curious what you think about it. I mean, having a writer or an actor step up to directing.
I think if it's a first-time director, I think that it's new. Period. Whether it's an actor, whether it's a barber, whether it's a video store clerk, whether it's a writer or producer. It's a first-timer is a first-timer, but I've noticed in the industry sometimes there's a hesitancy to take a shot or take a chance on.
Well, I think when you come from a different field, you have to force them into it. Meaning you have to have a script that they won't be able to have unless. So
the script becomes your leverage.
Like Darabont was with Shawshank, or I think if you're an actor, you have to have the leverage of either
getting other actors maybe, or being a movie star, I guess.
Or being a movie star, in which, like, if you want to make movies with me, you got to
Right.
give me this.
Do you think screenwriters make better directors than people from other that come into it from other careers?
Like Billy Wilder started as a screenwriter.
Coppola started as a screenwriter.
Coppola started as a screenwriter. Cameron Crowe. I would rather see a movie, I think, directed by a good screenwriter, say Whit Stillman, Woody Allen, Kevin Smith, than a good director write a script. Would you hire an actor to write a script? Would you be, would you be skeptical about that?
Yes, I would. The thing about directing is, it's the captain of the ship. It's a global job. You have to know a little bit about everything, but you have to be able to deal with actors, be on the floor, talk to department heads, and that's communication skills, which I think a lot of people can have. I always thought that, well, Quentin Tarantino must have been one hell of a video clerk in that store, because he obviously can communicate a vision, you know, and that's just from watching movies. But I do believe screenwriting is a craft. It is not something everyone can do. The same way not everyone can write a novel or write a concerto or whatever. Like it's a craft, and it's performed by craftsmen, and it's not something you could just step into.
But if you let an actor write a script, you're only throwing away $200 grand. Whereas if you let a writer direct a movie, you could be throwing away $20 million.
The size of the investment, you know, always gets weighed against, you know, the stress level.
Did you have an emblematic first-timer experience at New Line?
Well, I had two great second-timers. I had David Fincher and Paul Thomas Anderson.
No.
And I had the Hughes brothers were a great first-time experience. What are you working on next?
Don't know.
You're in between gigs right now?
There's a book I've optioned, which I'm going to try to make my second first film with.
Your second first film.
As a director of the second debut.
Right.
And otherwise, I don't know. I mean, there's that actor theory of you do one for them, do one for you, of the big movie and the little movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that applies to writers as well, because like if you
you
really
mentioned Gary Ross before. I presided over his first time effort at Pleasantville at New Line, and he had that same opinion of, like, you know, you want to get your vision out, whether it's a big movie or a small movie. You're a writer turned director. Now you're a director. It's just about the stories you want to tell, and not worry about.
So I'll try to follow the next story that interests me, as opposed to. I think I should do something that's about 50.
Right. Leading with the budget.
Yeah.
Well, come back and tell us how that works out.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Ted. Good luck with everything.
You were fabulous.
And thank all of you. Please check out the other episodes in the series. And remember, it starts with you. The next written by credit could be yours. I'm Mike DeLuca.